Happy Saturday. It's April 5th, 2025, and you are listening to Morning Meeting. I'm Ashley Baker in New York.
And I'm Michael Haney, also in New York.
Michael, before we get to the episode today, can we talk about how ridiculously expensive things are in New York? I mean, I took an Uber from Nolita to my apartment in Carnegie Hill.
Wait, I'm going to guess.
Please guess.
It was $75.
Okay, no, much higher. It was raining that night. Try again.
Oh, $110.
$137.50. I mean, are you kidding me?
No.
It's crazy.
Just to get a taxi, like the meter starts at like $8 half the time now. You go 2 blocks, you're already up to $15.
This is my favorite conversation in London at dinner parties. People don't believe me when I try to explain it. And then I went to the Mark Hotel for cocktails with a friend of mine. 2 margaritas. It was $88 before tips, so we can do the math on that at another point. But I mean, still, $100 for 2 drinks. I mean, it was total madness. But I suppose these are just the times that we live in. And on that note, well, it is another chaotic week in Trump's America. On Thursday, Trump's tariff announcements shocked and stunned the world. And that is really not even a hyperbolic statement. The markets are similarly spooked, and the chips will continue to fall. As always, Michael, airmail is the antidote to all of your worries.
It sure is. And, this is the weekend sports fans love, the climax of March Madness, when a college basketball champion is crowned. But as our colleague George Pendle notes, there's something he is calling the March of Madness. In this week's issue, he's created a bracket, much like that of the 64-team bracket, that lets you decide the maddest moment of the Trump presidency so far. George will join us to share his secrets of bracketology and what it all means. Then, speaking of college, remember the days, Ashley, when you showed up for freshman year and you learned your dorm room was a cinder block room with one window and no air conditioning? Well, Andrew Zucker has his look at the cottage industry that has sprung up around Harvard, Penn, and other Ivy League colleges and provides Nepo babies and children of the 0.1% a luxury alternative to campus living. He'll tell us all about it. And finally, Linda Wells is going to join us to discuss the new edition of Airmail Look, which has just landed, and all the style and wellness news you need to know about. So, Ashley, where would you like to begin today?
Well, if George Pendle is able to find some humor in the Trump situation, I think we need to start there. George is an editor-at-large at Airmail and the author of several books, including Death, A Life, as well as Happy Failure. Welcome, George.
Hello.
Okay, George. So sports fans, of which I'm not one, are interested in something called March Madness. I assume this is a basketball competition?
That's right. It's the college basketball competition, the NCAA March Madness competition, in which 64 teams battle it out. I follow it kind of tangentially, largely because of the somewhat ridiculous names some of the universities have, like the Boilermakers and the Tar Heels and the Zips and the Hoyas, which kind of makes it fun to try and, choose the winning team via the March Madness bracket. You kind of go through and each matchup, you try and choose the winning team and push them through until there's the Final Four, which is actually taking place this weekend. And it seemed like a perfect system in some way to actually deal with the incredibly insane events that have been going on in the United States for the last few months. We have March Madness basketball competition, but what we have in America seems to be the March of Madness, and it doesn't seem to be lasting just for a month. And I thought the March Madness bracket gave us a chance of trying to judge which was the maddest and most insane thing that the Trump administration has done yet. And by working them through a bracket, you can actually choose which you think is the maddest, most insane, most demented event of the last 3 months.
George, I'm so glad that you can make light of all of this because I'm finding it hard to find a sense of humor here. Do you think that's a sign of health, or do you think it's a sign of you just being straight up demented?
Well, I think one way of fighting against the chaos is by trying to instill order. And even if it's an order of worse to absolutely apocalyptic, I think we can still find some comfort in that. And, for instance, we've, in our interactive bracket, which our whizzes at Airmail have drawn together, we've chosen 16 of the worst things that have happened this year. And, you might have already forgot some of them, like the Trump meme coin that he came out with, or, some of the, the spurning of Vladimir Zelensky in the Oval Office seems months ago. But we've put the worst 16 things that the Trump administration has done. And I think that it allows a certain amount, if not closure, at least a certain amount of understanding of what's been taking place by working our way through these and trying to choose the worst thing that's happened.
Okay, so let's talk about some of these examples. Where does Signalgate fall into all of this?
Well, Signalgate is, as you know, a recent occurrence. So what we've tried to do is give each of the terrible things that have happened in the Trump administration seeds So something like, wooing Vladimir Putin is a number one seed, because I feel that that's one of the most outrageous things that the Trump administration has done. But something like the Trump meme coin, it's a kind of number 8 seed. And so we've put, the top seeds together, or the top seed against the bottom seed, so that they will, have a clearer path through to the final. But Signalgate is right there in the mix, I think. I think at the moment it's a number 4 seed, perhaps. But would you think that Signalgate is worse than the attack on the federal judges that the Trump administration has been doing? Now, it's tricky, but I might go with the attack on the federal judges as something that is worse. What do you think?
I mean, there's so much nefarious action going on. I couldn't even begin to choose a favorite. But I mean, George, how does one decide the winner, so to speak, in this bracket?
The winner, or should we say, the vilest, is basically you work your way through. Each round, you knock out one of the terrible things that the Trump administration has done until you're faced with a final 4 of terrible things. It might be, the roughing up of Canada. It might be, Signalgate. It might be Doge. It might be, the terrible treatment of Europe. But eventually, you'll probably find it's a very fun bracket to play with. But you might find that, yes, kind of alienating Europe is a bit worse than RFK's embrace of measles. And so you'll push that through, and eventually you'll find, and I think it's quite a satisfying moment to find that the worst thing that the Trump administration has done is there. You've chosen it. It's worse than all the others, whether it's Trump Gaza or J.D. Vance's eyeliner. It's your choice. I think thereby you can kind of feel like you have a bit of control over things. You can say, yes, well, that was the worst thing, and second place was this, and third place was this. It's an attempt to enforce sanity on an insane time.
I do like what you say about a bit of control. You feel some agency rather than just reacting to all this. You get to take a little bit of action and see what plays out. But you also end up feeling a little bit, it's not like the confetti cannons go off and you get to hoist a trophy and get a special T-shirt, but you still kind of feel a little bit like, I don't know, maybe a Roman gladiator, like, what have I really won? Have I won my freedom, or just to live to fight another day?
Well, I think living to fight the other day is the best we can hope for at the moment. But I could say that it could have been much worse in the NCAA tournament. There are 64 teams involved, and it wouldn't have been a stretch to fill this with 64 different crazy things the Trump administration have done. We've kind of honed it down to 16 of the worst. So we think that is manageable. And if you can find some humor in the madness, I don't think that's too bad a thing. So
they're not really our sweet 16, they're really our sour 16.
Exactly, very much. And let's not even suggest what the final 4, the alternative name for that might be.
George, you live in Washington, D.C. I mean, do you intend to play this with friends who are in politics? What is the conversation that you're hearing amongst your friends and colleagues who work in the government? I mean, do you think that this is a game that will appeal to them? Are they able to see the light and the humor quite yet, or is it still too raw?
Well, they're a little punch drunk by everything that's been going on, but I think we've got to try and find the light in even the darkest moment. I mean, yes, this is gallows humor, but let's try and keep the humor. Otherwise, it's purely the gallows. We don't want things to get too utterly dark. Let's just keep them, slightly kind of Twilight-like.
I think your next iteration would be if we could start to predict who's going to make the next bracket, if you could sort of I don't know if Ladbrokes or someone has a betting pool on, come up with the craziest thing that he'll do and put some money down on it, and if it actually happens.
That's true. I mean, the problem with, if Trump has any genius in him, it's the ability to constantly shock and appall. And, I don't think even the best bookmakers in the world could imagine what he's going to come up with next, unfortunately. So maybe it's best not to imagine, because it will always fall short of what he's capable of.
Well, George, thank you. On that cheery note, we appreciate your lighter take on what's happening in politics. And frankly, I look forward to playing this game with you. I think we'd have a grand old time, especially if we can involve some alcohol.
Indeed. Let's swap our winners, or rather our most egregious losers, once we get to them. Thanks so much, guys.
Game on. Bye, George.
Thank you, George.
Well, on that note, let's move on to another favorite topic: rich kids behaving indulgently.
Yeah. When this story came in, I was like, part of me couldn't believe it, and part of me was like, well, of course this is happening.
Yeah, exactly. Bless Andrew for being there first and making sense of it all for us. Andrew Zucker is a writer. He also works at a television production company in New York. Welcome, Andrew. So, Andrew, as we were reading your story on alternative student housing for the world's wealthiest college students, it sort of struck me. I'm surprised we haven't read this story before because it seems so obvious, right? Like, of course, the once humble dorm room is not good enough for the richest children in the universe.
You know, it's funny. Oftentimes, some of the richest people in the world, are allergic somehow to hallway bathrooms. And even though Donald Trump wants to defund some of these Ivy League schools, they still hold a really special place amongst the minds of the 0.1%. And as we all know, parents of these children don't want their kids suffering through college life in the same dorm rooms as everyone else. And so they need special apartments. And that's how this asset class has blown up in recent years.
Let's start with Cambridge, Massachusetts.
So 1075 Mass Avenue was built around 2012. It was the first new development in Harvard Square in 20 years. And it was built by this visionary developer named Raj Danda. It's a 20-unit building, 5 stories tall. It's made of glass. It's got all the newest features in residential real estate, and it's where Harvard's elite love to rent.
And what is sort of the going rate of these lodgings? I mean, I assume it's more expensive than room and board at Harvard.
Yes, by quite a bit. So the going rate for a 2-bedroom at 1075 Mass Ave is around $6,500. And so it's not students paying this rent, it's their parents. But one of the unique parts of luxury student housing is that the guarantors are the parents. And so if you're a developer who owns some of these units, it's a pretty good business because no one falls behind on rent.
I mean, how popular are these? Is there any vacancy at all?
Raj shared a story with me where one of the students who had lived there as an undergrad got into Harvard Law early. So this student had 2 years to go work elsewhere outside of Boston before returning. And the apartments there go so quickly that this student and her family decided to rent the apartment for 2 years where no one lived in it because they didn't know if they'd be able to rent it when she got back. So there's rarely any space that comes up. Oftentimes students try to text their friends who live in the building to see if they can get a leg up when leases are up.
You know, Harvard may have been the originator of this trend, but the university is no longer alone. Tell us about what kind of accommodations are available to ultra-wealthy students at, say, the University of Pennsylvania.
The University of Pennsylvania has many luxury offerings. One of them is AKA University City. You might know the AKA brand. This is like the 740 Park of the University of Pennsylvania. It's a white glove, high-rise building. It has everything from an indoor golf simulator to a fitness center, even a private dining room. It's a beautiful high-rise, and it's as if these students are living their fantasy lives 20 years down the line right there in college.
I mean, maybe I've been in the UK too long, but this just has me shuddering. I mean, isn't there an argument to be made that this is a fairly toxic development on college campuses in which, the beauty of the experience is in this amalgamation of ideas and personalities and backgrounds, to take this rarefied class and make them even more rarefied seems counterintuitive.
Totally. So oftentimes, though not always, these developments pop up from investors outside of the university. Sometimes the university does sponsor it, but when these developments, become more popular on university campuses, it really exasperates the socioeconomic divide. And we've seen students at University of Pennsylvania in particular speak out against one of the luxury offerings named Domus because it encroaches upon this idea that college is supposed to be a melting pot of different classes and different races, and this really separates the class rather than brings it together.
It was always the great equalizers, like boot camp, right? I mean, it's sort of like we're being in the barracks together and, having to trudge down the hall, carrying your toiletries for the morning shower and, looking like hell. And now it's all white glove service, right?
Totally. And it's even attracted private equity. So KKR is investing in this asset class, campus apartments that are oftentimes luxury offerings. Blackstone is also investing in off-campus apartments. And so I think as private equity pours in, we're going to see more and more buildings and units pop up.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, this just strikes me as so gross. You would imagine there'd be a movement against this sort of thing at these universities where, I mean, I suppose diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging has somewhat fallen out of fashion due to the Trump administration. But for so many years, this was a major conversation, that was taking up such an important part of these universities. And now it seems like, oh, all of a sudden we're just going to totally accept this. And let's keep the super rich separate. And I mean, is there any kind of backlash against this at all happening in the universities that you have been reporting on?
Well, Harvard has no affiliation with 1075 Mass Avenue. And so, they, of course, encourage all of their students to live in these century-old dormitories. But other campuses, like the University of Pennsylvania, are partnered with developers to build some of these luxury offerings. And so it is a really good business for them. Until more students speak out, particularly at that university, I don't expect there to be any change.
I just want to point out, Donald Trump, University of Pennsylvania, you'd think he'd get in on some sort of development deal here as well.
That's a great idea.
He's bringing up pressure on these Ivy Leagues to sort of like bend to him, and why not cut a deal?
Maybe the next executive order, the University of Pennsylvania can cut a deal by building a Trump Penn dormitory.
I mean, do we have any reporting, Andrew, about the parties that are happening at these places? Because I can't imagine that they're as exciting as, say, an MIT fraternity party. Actually, maybe that's a wrong comparison. A Harvard Finals Club party, let's say.
I think all of the activity that's worth going out for, particularly on Harvard's campus, is along the final club row. And listen, these kids love inviting people over and having a good time, but you can't really fit a DJ set inside these units. And if you do, you'll get complaints from the neighbors.
It's probably a pretty nice spot to sleep off a hangover, right? It's like the Four Seasons of dorms.
Yes. Listen, Raj Danda, the developer of 1075, told me that there's often maid service with these units, and these parents spare no expense when it comes to making sure that their kid is well taken care of.
They probably have IV people coming in there, after the hangover recovery. But yeah, it's just pampering. Come on, you're supposed to, again, there's no hardship anymore, right?
Totally. You should be able to deal with a hallway bathroom. And I think that a lot of the times when you meet some of the students who come out of these universities and you wonder why they're so ill-adjusted, it comes from the fact that they've lived off campus.
Right. They're already living on screens. They're already non-socialized, and now they're getting even less socialization.
Well, it's interesting too. There's always been this trend that the wealthy parents of college students at, say, NYU or Columbia, would buy them these apartments in New York City, studio apartments as investment properties. And that's still happening, right, to a certain extent?
It certainly happened at Brown. One student told me that there are some families who have bought houses for their kids to live in Providence. I think it's often framed when it does happen on these campuses, as you noted, as investments. But the reality is they're okay taking a loss as long as their kid is happy in their lovely apartment.
I would just love to see an op-ed written about this in the student newspaper, but maybe we're missing something, Michael. I mean, maybe this is how we should have done college. I certainly would have slept better at night if I had been in 500 thread count sheets versus, living with a roommate who didn't sleep except for during daytime hours and did nothing but watch reruns of My So-Called Life. I see the appeal to this.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm going to sound like Abe Lincoln walking 12 miles and barefoot in the snow, and Andrew's going to roll his eyes. But, I was in a dorm that didn't even have air conditioning. So there you go.
Mine didn't have it either, Michael.
There you go. Andrew's being quiet over there.
Well, you went to school before air conditioning was even invented. So.
Watch it,
Jesus,
son.
This is a rougher interview than I thought.
I meant that towards Michael, not you, Ashley.
Oof. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Well, Michael and I will share our college adventures on another day and time. But now let's get to Linda Wells, our expert and hero when it comes to all things beauty and wellness. Linda was the founding editor of Allure, a magazine that she edited for 25 years. And she is now the beauty and wellness columnist at Airmail. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you very much. Hi, Michael and Ashley.
So, Linda, the world might be imploding, but in the worlds of beauty and wellness, things are continuing apace. And you've got a great story in the issue this week about the rise of healthy sodas. Who knew such a thing was possible?
I know you think that's a really good oxymoron, right? Healthy sodas, but people are now drinking them as if they're supplements in liquid form. And I think that we saw an evolution of sodas. They started out as, sugary and terrible for you. And then we went through the diet soda era, and things were stripped of their vices, but there was really nothing good about them. And then we went to zero, which was sort of a marketing trick, I think, partly to take the diet out of it so that it was more appealing to men and to younger people. Kind of diet soda was sort of for boomers. And then we had sparkling waters, which had a little bit of fruit juice, but they were kind of boring. And then all of a sudden, everybody started adding these virtues. So we've got Poppy and Olipop and a whole host of these new sodas that have things like prebiotics that help your gut microbiome and vitamins. Then we got into CBD and magnesium and L-theanine. All these things that claim to calm you. So they're now not only trying to be healthy, but they're trying to help your mental health too. So it's a whole evolution, and it's a fascinating area. And I think it's given the soda industry a second life. Not that we were crying any tears for them, but Pepsi just bought Poppy for almost $2 billion. Olipop is, thriving. So I think that it's a really interesting world.
Does this mean we have to give up Diet Coke for good?
Well, there's really not much good about Diet Coke other than the fact that kind of can be a delicious break. And it's kind of disgusting and delicious at the same time when you're at the movies. But you know who really is into Diet Coke? MAGA. Donald Trump and Musk are posting about Diet Coke. We know Donald Trump has a button on his desk in the Oval Office that he pushes whenever he wants one. And the word is that he pushes it sometimes as many as 12 times a day. So they're bringing back Diet Coke, and, well, let's just hope it helps their health.
While we're talking about food and bev, we have a really interesting piece in the issue about the rise of gourmand fragrances. What exactly is this trend?
We've been seeing this trend for a while, and it really picked up a pace. It's this idea that these fragrances they almost smell like dessert. They're coconutty and sweet and sugary. And we first saw it with Angel by Terry Mugler. And then we started getting into things like, one of the biggest sellers right now at Sephora is Sol de Janeiro. And they made this Boom Boom cream, which is a coconutty cookie dough smelling body scrub and moisturizer. And then they branched off and started turning it into fragrances, and the fragrances are selling like crazy. So that's that whole world of super sweet, sugary fragrances. And then now people have taken it to the next step, and they're doing savory scents. So things like soy sauce smelling fragrances, herby fragrances. One is called Bistro Water, and some of them are in partnerships with restaurants. It sounds revolting, frankly. One is even called Oyster, which I can't. I know that really nice fresh oysters are delicious and smell good, but I can't get around the fact that an oyster fragrance doesn't seem like something I want to put on my Fells points. But these are having a little moment, so we shall see. Maybe it is because of Ozempic and Wegovy and everything else that people are not eating the food that they used to eat, so they're spraying it on their body.
On the topic of Ozempic, Linda, I've been running and walking and stuff in Central Park quite a bit this weekend. It's really been pronounced how much skinnier everyone is. It's crazy. Have you guys noticed that?
I have. I've noticed it at parties and things. I went to a book party last night for The Tell, and everyone's so skinny. But that's also like Upper East Side ladies, rich ladies. They're all skinny anyway.
We have a really fun story in the issue about the midlife divorce and this notion that for some people it's an act of wellness, this idea of sort of scheduling a divorce for the time when your kids go to college, and that can be an ultimate act of self-care. What exactly is going on here?
I know. Well, we see it. You think about Giselle and Tom Brady, Jeff Bezos, these people who look like they're having the time of their life in their second chapter. And I think part of it is that, you start out with a partner and your priority is to have kids and, build your career. And then all of a sudden the kids go to college and you think, wait a second, now I want different things. Your priorities change. And people might want to travel, or they might kind of want to reinvent themselves. So we're seeing that. And I think that also people are thinking about divorce as an option rather than this sort of terrible concept and life-ending moment. And that gives them a little bit more freedom to redefine their relationship within it. So it's sort of like you're not trapped. There's always that option. So it's something it's called the gray divorce, and we're seeing a lot more of it.
One of the other stories I loved in the issue is because, it's you guys tapped into one of my free-floating anxieties is how to have a stress-free inbox. It feels like some people maybe don't need to lose weight and get it, how to shed that stuff. I'm trying to always shed my inbox. So Ashley, Linda, tell me about how you guys came to this story and what I should be doing.
Well, I have a very overweight inbox that needs Ozempic. I have 160,000 unread emails. That's a lot. So that would give Ashley and you, Michael, you would not be able to survive with that, just looking at you on your phone. But Ashley actually has zero inbox. And Ashley, I think this is your story. You've got to tell it because God knows I can't.
Well, because I work in magazines or whatever we call them now, I get a lot of emails, like at least 200 a day. And a lot of them are from publicists, and because I cover fashion and travel and food and beauty and wellness, like all these things. So it can be really overwhelming. And it was hard to keep up with. And now all these publicists also write to you on all different channels. Like they text you, they Instagram DM you, and it really stresses me out because I'm not a person who likes to have a lot of detritus lying around. I like to take care of things. And then if you don't respond, then they follow up and follow up and follow up. And the implication is that, you're not on top of your stuff, which is an implication I just loathe and I will try to avoid at any cost. So about 2 years ago, I decided to sort of take matters into my own hands. And through actually the fashion designer Anya Hindmarch, I had discovered this method called the Getting Things Done method. And it's a book. It's written by this guy named David Allen. It's like 20 years old. And they do these courses. And he's an American guy, but he's very popular in London. And so my friend Sky and I actually signed up and took his class in the art of getting things done. And there were a lot of interesting things that we learned, but for me, the most transformative was this idea of inbox zero and the way that you process all of the information that's coming at you in all of these ways. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to get this done. Between my work email, I've got tens of thousands. Between my personal email, I probably have tens of thousands over all these years, and I don't have time to go through and delete every single one. But his method was actually like, look, if it's over 6 weeks old, you just archive it. Because if it's over 6 weeks old, it's probably not that relevant to you anyway. If you archive it, at least it's out of your inbox and you haven't lost it for good. And then I went through and started spending, 30 minutes to an hour each day, kind of processing everything else, responding to things that required a response, deleting things that needed to be deleted. And as a result, now I just really stay on top of my inbox and I try to never have more than 20 or so emails in it. So anyway, there's this whole kind of methodology. It's a very self-helpy story, but it was the kind of thing that was really incredible and transformative for me. And so hopefully people will find it useful, but it's really changed my life. Like I sleep better at night knowing that I'm not going to wake up to sheer chaos every morning.
I would just add, I think one thing that was great to learn in your story, and again, actionable, is it's sort of like the version of lean into something and get it out of the way. But your idea, step 5, which is embrace the weekly review, which is like set 15 minutes and just deal with it all, go through it. And it's like cleaning up your house every week, right? You just get it all done. And, you stop from becoming an email hoarder, as it were, like you want to be a hoarder in your personal life.
God, I'm a
you don't
hoarder.
want to be an email hoarder. So just clean it all out, get it out, purge, and then you're on to the next thing. But if you schedule that, it's great.
You know what, Michael? The use of the word hoarder is now going to make my behavior change. I'm going to have like 1,000 emails unread by the end of this weekend.
All right. I wish we could all have visibility into you, and watch you chip away at it. But, it could be like a little...
It'll put you to sleep, and we have a story about sleep, so that'll be good.
Okay. So Linda, we have also one more story on the next wave of Ozempic. What's going on there?
Well, there's no end of fascination with Ozempic, and there's going to be 2 new drugs coming that we know of within the year or two. Both of them are dealing with kind of food noise and how to silence the food noise, which Ozempic and Wegovy have been very effective at. And that is that constant thinking about, what am I going to eat? I want more to eat. And what's dinner while you're eating dinner. I love that because I always do that. But so one of them is a monthly injection versus a weekly one. It's called Maritide. And the trials are showing that users lose 20% of their body weight and they keep it off for 5 months after the injections end. So it deals with some of the shortcomings of the existing drugs. And then there's another unpronounceable pill, or Forglipon. I know I'm saying that incorrectly. And it's a pill that you take daily. So it's not an injection. It is a daily drug. It gives you that sense of fullness and it silences food noise, which is really 2 of the big things. So those are things that people can look forward to. And the author of the story also explores ways to get the effect of Ozempic without going on the drugs. So he tries eating at a shorter period of time and drinking a glass of water and having a lot of fiber. But in the end, we all know those tricks. And that's why these drugs exist, because those tricks don't work.
Lots of things to look forward to.
There are. Thank you both so much.
Thanks, Linda. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Linda.
There's only one place to discover a global snapshot of the current cultural scene. Airmail's Arts Intel Report. Our international research tool for what to do and where and when to do it is user-friendly, continuously updated, and meticulously curated. Arts Intel is handy at home, on the road, and when you're planning your next trip. It also includes indispensable lists of restaurants and hotels in key cities around the world, recommended by our well-traveled experts. Explore Arts Intel at airmail.news/arts-intel, and be sure to sign up for our Week in Culture newsletter, which is published every Wednesday afternoon at airmail.news/WIC. I'm Chris Garrett, an Airmail Deputy Editor, and I never leave home without it. Bon voyage.
Michael, it is the weekend. Speaking of things that we want to linger in, I know you've got some fabulous cultural recommendations for us.
Have you checked out the new Apple show with Seth Rogen, The Studio?
No, tell me.
I'm only one episode in. You know me, I like to parse things out, and Apple sort of only releases 1 or 2 a week. It's great. It's on Apple TV. It's called The Sin. It sort of looks at Seth Rogen plays a guy who, of course, loves movies, and then guess what? He gets his wish. He gets to take over a studio, and then, of course, you learn that he has to sort of like, in order to keep the studio alive, you have to make terrible movies. So it's a very funny, astute comedy that sort of, in the steps of everything from The Player by Robert Altman to other movies set or other shows and movies set in Hollywood. But Rogen's great. Got a lot of wonderful cameos. Martin Scorsese, Charlize Theron, everyone down the line. So I'm, like I say, one episode in. I'm going to keep going with it. If I change my mind, I'll update you accordingly. But it is called The Studio. It's on Apple TV, and it's sort of interesting. Was created by Rogen as well as his writing partner, who they've been best friends since they were kids in school, and they were they based Superbad on their own lives. So anyway, it's got a lot of funny lines. And I'm sticking with it. That's my story. And you, my dear, what do you have for us?
I've been watching The White Lotus since I landed in New York because my VPN isn't working in London right now. So I had to get on it. So I've been watching that. And then I'm reading this book called The Tell by Amy Griffin that Linda Wells gave me.
Everyone's obsessed with this book.
It's so interesting. I mean, we'd been talking about it like in story meetings for a while. Linda had written about it and she was like, I can't even talk to you about this until you've read it. You just have to read it. So we're neighbors in New York. It's heavenly. So she dropped one off at my apartment this morning. Thank you, Linda. And I've really read like 150 pages already. It's really fascinating. I mean, Amy is a known quantity in New York. She's an investor. She founded a company called G9 Ventures, and she has been one of the funders of Goop and On Running, those sneakers we know and love. And she was involved with Blackstone's purchase of Hello Sunshine. Anyway, so she's very successful in that universe, and she has a lot of well-known friends who have been promoting this book. So if you've seen it on social media, it is no surprise. It's incredibly well written. She delves into her past and uncovers some abuse that happened in her childhood. And I won't say anything more than that, but she writes pretty lyrically. It's very immersive. It's certainly a page turner, and it's a really provocative book. I don't want to spoil the plot too much by talking about that, but Michael, I think you should read it. I think you'd enjoy it. And then we can have another conversation about the power of memory, how memory is constructed and reconstructed. It's just really interesting stuff. So it's called The Tell by Amy Griffin, a fascinating memoir that you will devour in an afternoon and hopefully won't hate us for it. There you go.
Well, maybe Linda will drop a copy off for me.
If you're nice, you never know. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We wish you a wonderful spring weekend. Michael, will you please read us out?
Morning Meeting is produced by Airplay Productions and edited by Jesse Cannon. Our co-editors are Graydon Carter and Alessandra Stanley. Our chief operating officer is Bill Keenan. Our deputy editors are Ashley Baker, Chris Garrett, Nathan King, Julie Vitale, and Ash Carter. Our CMO is Emily Davis, and our music supervisor is Randall Poster. The theme music is The Cute Monster by the Buddy Collette Quintet. A new edition of Airmail is published every Saturday, so please subscribe and enjoy all of our stories on airmail.news, which we update every day. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at Airmail Weekly. We will be back here next Saturday with another edition of Morning Meeting, but in the meantime, be sure to subscribe at Spotify or Apple Music. But most of all, thank you again for joining us.